In a recent USA Today Suffolk University poll, people were asked how they would describe the year 2020 in a single word. 5% used the word okay or good. Another 5% used the word anxious and also stressful. 6% used the word tumultuous. 8% used the word crazy. 10% used the word disaster and also hell. They're interchangeable there. 11% used the word challenging or difficult. 15% used an expletive. And 23% described 2020 as awful. Also, they used the word terrible or horrible. All pretty much gets the point across. And while the early months of this coming year are likely to be much like those that preceded them, with the escalating cases and deaths from the virus, ongoing and painful social distancing measures, and the continued disruption of normal life, there is hope that we may be on the verge of a return to some version of life as we remember it. And maybe our path in this coming year will be altered in some way because of the year that was, as challenging or awful or good or tumultuous, challenging as it was. And Epiphany may have something to say about that. The Christmas season is ending. Christmas trees have been removed, at least ours has. But possibly some of you who are among traditionalists, a creche or a nativity scene still occupies a place of honor in your home as we wait for the official day of Epiphany, January 6th, to celebrate how the Magi followed a star in the east to find the infant Christ. They brought him gold and frankincense and myrrh and proclaimed him the Son of God. It was not an easy journey, but Epiphany is this discovery of the gift of joy that would change their future path, that would send them literally and spiritually on another road. When King Herod hears about the birth of Jesus, he and all Jerusalem with him are frightened. Herod seeks information about the birthplace of the child from the religious leaders, and then he reaches out to the wise men, these magi, to inform him when they locate the child so that he can also pay homage. And so these wise men set out on their journey following a star. Now, in ancient times, many people guided their lives by stars and constellations. They believed that they could foretell the future from the stars. They believed that a person's destiny was settled by the star under which he or she was born. The stars pursue their unwavering courses. They represent the order of the universe. And so if then there suddenly appears some brilliant star, if the steady order of the universe was broken by some special phenomenon, it looked as if God was breaking into the order and announcing some special thing, an epiphany, perhaps. And so the Magi, who traveled by night to avoid the searing desert heat, must have loved the night sky because they followed this rising star set against the constellations for days, maybe weeks or months, to find this child. Contrary to our nativity scenes that everyone and their dog is at in the moment of the birth, the Magi arrived on the scene later, perhaps much later. And once the star stopped and they found this child, an epiphany happened. When they saw Jesus with Mary, they were overwhelmed with joy. I have a hunch that whenever the overwhelming joy happens to any of us, we just want to give something. We want to respond. You have to give something. You have to make an offering to show some sign of gratitude. And so they presented the Christ child gifts that would sustain his family through their challenging refugee journey. And being warned in a dream not to report back to Herod, they returned by another road, moving silently out of the story as mysteriously as they entered it. Well, as it turns out, the source of the Magi's joy and the source of Herod's fury was one and the same: a little Jewish boy. That's because back then, great important births brought the potential for political and social revolution. As Herod saw it, this child spelled the end of his rule. So he was filled with fear and rage because he recognizes the child's significance and perceives him as a threat to his own power. Because there are basically two typical responses today that were also true in that day. That Jesus will be recognized by some as God entering the world on behalf of all of humankind for the good, or Jesus will be feared as a threat to the political and even religious leaders who exercise power over other humans. And make no mistake, Jesus is very much a threat to power today as he was back then. Because who really wants to truly love their enemy, let alone their neighbor? Who really wants to forgive and to keep forgiving over and over again? Who really wants to go the extra mile to ensure every person of every race, creed, color, and status matters and belongs and has enough? Who really wants to show compassion when it isn't deserved, or do justice when it is really difficult, or extend mercy when punishment is warranted? Who really wants to lay aside their own power in order to serve? Who really wants to set aside their tightly held political views or convictions and consider that maybe Jesus has something bigger and better in mind? Who really wants to build bigger tables to welcome people in instead of bigger walls to keep people out? Oh, Jesus is a major threat. He's not just about our guarantee of heaven. He's about your life, my life, and our neighbor's life right here and now, today. Jesus is an ongoing epiphany. Because epiphany refers to a moment of sudden revelation, a profound understanding of something, an insightful moment that instills new spiritual insight, vision, or perspective. The early church used this word to refer to the incarnation, to God's self-manifestation in Jesus Christ, that the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory. Epiphany is the shepherds recognizing the Messiah. It is the Magi acknowledging this King of glory. It is Peter's confession, "You are the Christ." It is the two disciples on the road to Emmaus having their eyes opened. It is any time that our eyes and hearts and minds are open to who God is and what God is like as we see in Jesus Christ. Because wherever the Christmas child is born in a heart, wherever Jesus begins his earthly life again and anew, that is where the life of God's love and of God's peace dawns all over again. Friends, we all know that the issues that surfaced during 2020 will not go away, because there were plenty of them, and they were deep, heavy, big issues. But we celebrate Epiphany in a new year because it reminds us of who we are called to be as followers of Jesus Christ in a world that God so loves and still loves. That we are called as people to see, to recognize and point to God's presence in the world. That we are people who strive to give ourselves and our lives to God in joy, as the Magi did. People who consider what it means to live the difference the birth and life of Jesus makes in this world. People who choose awareness and attentiveness to the place, the circumstances, the people, the community that might be part of Jesus' continuing work in the world. We have followed a star and found a God whose light dwells forever with you and me. This light is for everyone. It is even in these barren and broken places and days that we live in that the light dares to shine again and again and all over again, showing us a different way, leading us by another road. The Magi from faraway lands were led by this brilliant star in the sky to the Christ child. And now it is our turn to be led by a star. This star, though, is not a celestial ball of fire burning up in space. This star is an unassuming paper cutout with an equally unassuming word written on it. We have an Epiphany tradition, as many churches do, that we started a few years ago, of choosing a star word as a gift to guide you during this next year, to ponder what significance this word might have in your life, to wrestle with it, to chew on it, to think about it, to let it work on you in some way. And this is actually a spiritual practice. It's a pretty easy one, but it can lead into some challenging things if you really give it attention. Because this word provides a focus to pray on it and over it, and to help you maybe listen more attentively to how God might be speaking to you through a very simple message. No one could ever expect how prophetic the 2020 Epiphany words would be, especially for me. I drew blindly the word lost. And while I'm very ready to be done with that word, I had no idea what that word lost would do to me and how it would shape me over the last year. I can't even begin to share with you all those many things. And so we encourage you to trust your word. You may not like it. You may want to throw it back. But usually the words we want nothing to do with, those words want something to do with us. It may, in fact, gain new meaning as you live on through the year. And so approach this practice with the belief that the word has found you. Keep it. Look the word up if you need to. Take it home and hang it up somewhere where you're sure to see it every day or multiple times a day. On a mirror, on a fridge, by the door, in your car, your office. And of course, we're not here together to collectively draw our words, but we invite you to swing by the church office sometime in the next few weeks to draw your word, if you're comfortable doing so. If not, we will gladly mail you a word. We will draw it blindly and put it in an envelope and mail it to you, and we will do everything we can to get you your word, whether you want it or not. So it's coming for you. What will this year's words hold? Whatever the word may be for you, one thing is sure: when we are open to God's Spirit, an assuming paper star with an equally unassuming word written on it can guide you, maybe just as powerfully as that star in the sky guided the Magi so many years ago. Friends, brothers and sisters, in this bread and in this cup at this table, we celebrate something we can't quite understand, especially when we're not together. It perhaps becomes even more mysterious, but maybe also more meaningful in some way, because this meal has the power to commune us together, because God's Spirit runs in and through and over it. There is something that will satisfy our hunger at this meal. No matter how long we have wandered, here we are found at this table. Our light has come. And so we come to this table, we come to the extension of this table in your own homes, wherever you may be at this moment, and see that God is here and God is with you, that God comes to be with us now and always. And we partake of this ordinary bread and this ordinary cup because they are made extraordinary. And then we are charged to bring God's extraordinary possibilities and extraordinary love and grace into the world. So come to this table, come to your space, and be overwhelmed with the joy of God. Let us pray. Holy Spirit, come into this bread and this cup. Transform these ordinary objects as you change our hearts to shape and form your world with the joy you promise, the same joy that overwhelmed the Magi. Pour your grace upon us so that we overflow with your love. And we celebrate together, even while we are apart, that Jesus Christ came to be known by every person, every country, every culture,